topic we're discussing today is a statement by the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops regarding Bill C-6, which amends the criminal code with regard to conversion therapy. In it, the bishops say the Catholic Church, like many Canadians, is opposed to any form of coercive and manipulative activities because they do not respect the sacred dignity of the human person and the freedoms inherent with that dignity. The statement goes on to say the bishops note significant concern with the content of Bill C-6, especially its ambiguities, which they fear could render lawful actions as criminal offenses. Your Grace, can you spell out the objections to Bill C-6?
Sure. I think you've captured a lot of it already just in your introduction. So the federal government has introduced this piece of legislation dealing with what they call conversion therapy. And basically what the federal bill hopes to achieve is to prevent anyone from being forced into what they call conversion therapy, which they present as having a person change their sexual orientation or change their gender identity. Well, when it comes to not wanting to force anybody into something against their will, of course the church would support that. That's a worthy goal. At the same time, though, when you look at the definition as they put it forward, it involves some ambiguities and it involves some lack of precision, involves some expansion that could allow for an over-application of the bill such that it could start to infringe upon certain rights. So, for example, it talks about, and I have it here in front of me, the definition, a practice, a treatment, or a service. That's very, very broad. That's aimed not just at the question of conversion itself, but also aims to repress or reduce non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior. That broadens the application and the scope of this bill substantially in a way that could start infringing, as I said a minute ago, on certain rights. So, for example, if someone with same-sex attraction were to come to a priest and say, not wanting to look at the question of whether or not the orientation could be changed, put that aside, but wanting to live a faithful life as a Christian. Now, here we get at what the church would really want to be focusing upon when it comes to conversion or change. And that's the conversion or change that stands at the heart of every Christian life, right? The change of mindset that would want to put the gospel first, that puts first fidelity to Jesus Christ, and in that light is willing to undergo any change in behavior that would be inconsistent with the teachings of our Lord. That's been part of the Christian life from day one. So it's not unusual for someone, whether it's someone dealing with same-sex attraction or some other issue that they're grappling with, to sit down with a priest and say, look, I need some assistance, I need some help, I need some spiritual guidance or whatever to help me live a faithful life, as a follower of Jesus Christ. And that could very well mean some changes in sexual behavior or changes in other behaviors that are inconsistent with the gospel. And sometimes the habits get so deeply ingrained that just to try and change things by my own efforts isn't going to work. And the priest can assure the person that we're happy to walk with them, accompany them, help give them the supports that they need. Above all, the support of grace. I mean, it's at the heart of Christian teaching that the changes that are required in a person's life to live faithfully as a disciple need the help of divine grace. So this is a normal thing that would happen in an encounter with a priest, of anybody who wants to be faithful to the Lord. And with this definition as ambiguous and as so potentially broad as it is, might it be that this kind of support, this kind of service that we offer to somebody who simply wants to live a Christian life might somehow be criminalized. We also know that parents are the first teachers of their children, and they're going to want to bring their children up in a way that obviously is healthy, is in a way that is consistent with Christian beliefs, that will be a way that is consistent with what the church teaches on human sexuality and so on. And children today particularly, but always, they're always going to have questions, they're always going to struggle, they're always going to wonder, especially as they interact with others or they see things on social media. And the loving thing for any parent to do, the natural thing that any parent would want to do with their child, is to talk that all out, right? And help them understand what's going to be best for them, humanly speaking, as well as from the perspective of faith. Were that kind of a conversation ever somehow to be deemed public, could that somehow fall under this particular definition? So those are just a couple of examples of how, if things are not made very, very precise, and if the bill is not amended to include within it protections against these sorts of overreach, then these are real possibilities that we need to guard against. So the bishops looking at this are saying, you know what, and the bishops of course have, through the CCCB, made their points known to the government on this issue, but in addition we're reaching out to our people and say, you know what, it's going to be important for us to write to the government and say, make sure that these protections are actually written into the bill. Now, in fairness, the Department of Justice, as I understand it, in news releases and so on, has said that some of the things that I've just articulated are not envisioned by this particular bill. Well, if that's the case, and as long as some of that language of the bill remains ambiguous and open to over-application and misapplication, then what we're saying is, well, then why not actually include that in the bill for the sake of clarity?
Just to pick up on what you were saying in terms of Bill C-6 being seen as an overreach, critics may see the statement as the church protecting herself. How do you respond to that criticism?
When the church stands up in defense of its own rights, it's in defense of the right of the church to do what she must, and that's to be with her people and to communicate the gospel and to help them live fully human lives that are fully that of a disciple. So it's not a self-serving thing when you consider the reason for which the church has rights and the reason for which those rights are in fact already recognized as among the first rights by our very own charter. That's because of the service that the church renders to her people. So ultimately, this is in defense of our people and the ability for them to receive from their church the teaching and the counsel and the assistance that they seek. No secular authority should ever be able to stand between the church and her people.
The statement on Bill C-6 includes a call to action.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like, and what's the most effective course of action for our people?
Yeah, in my estimation, and I've heard this from members of Parliament themselves, the most effective way is to show by your modality of communication that this is a serious issue for you personally. And if something is seriously important for an individual, they're going to take the time, they're going to be very, very deliberate about making sure that they personally convey what their personal opinion is to their elected official. In concrete terms, that means taking the time to write a letter. It means taking the time to pick up the phone. It means taking the time to make a trip down to the constituency office of your elected official to show just how deeply one feels about this particular issue. Easy to sign a petition, easy to sign a form letter. I'm not saying that they're totally ineffective. I wouldn't want to go that far. But I think what really captures the notice of our elected officials is when someone shows by the way that they communicate that they feel really, really deeply about this.
Those are all questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.